Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Elevated Energy Podcast. As usual, your trusted hosts, Scott and Blaine. This week, I'm kind of the show, and we're gonna be going over Blaine a little bit, who you are, where you're at, what you got going on, man. So, yeah,
sounds good.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, bro. What's good with you?
Okay, so well, my name is Blaine or Richard Klein, one of the two, depends on how professional I'm feeling that day.
Right.
I'm from Asheville, North Carolina. I got started in sales from like a couple of my buddies starting like little apparel lines. I was big into the rave scene for a really long time. And so with that comes a lot of just like free art and a lot of it having to do with like sacred geometry. It's like psychedelic art. And so I got in touch with a few artists who had some apparel lines running, and I kind of helped them sell them around. I promoted for shows for a really long time, and just kind of like goofed around in the electronic music scene. And so that's kind of where I got started with that. And honestly, that kind of like probably led me towards being a little bit more on the renewable energy side, is just the kind of hippie influence of like the rave. We were kind of like new age techno hippies a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like I started DJing when I was like, I want to say like 18, right? So I started going to raves when I was like 17, getting into shows underage, and then continued going when I was 18. The year that I turned 18, I got some turntables, right? So I actually got my own mixing setup.
Right.
And so that started up, right? And then about a year and a half after that, I was at Imagine Music Festival, right? And me and my buddy Jordan Daniel were actually DJ partners at the time, right? And I was Waldo the Squid, and he was Magnatomic. And so I think we were like Squid Mac was what we were called together. But either way, so we were just spilling around this fucking music festival, right? And he runs into this group called H Pod out of Greenville, right? And so they had a side stage set up out in the camping area, right, where they were just like throwing down all day with like a bunch of their DJ homies and whatnot. And my buddy Jordan actually ran into them. I was hungover as shit during this time. I had gotten insanely drunk the night before and killed like a liter of tequila in about a half hour to myself. And so yeah, I was having a fun day. But he went over and ran into these people, right, and got us a set time at 5 p.m. that day, right? And so I go from being absolutely hungover as fuck, right, to pounding water, getting myself ready for this 5 p.m. set time, right? And then we go over there and throw the fuck down, dude. Like I literally just locked in for an hour and we threw a banger set. Everybody was super hype about it. We got booked for 3 shows after that because of it, right, with H Pod and shit. Yeah, so we blew that shit up, and then I immediately went back to throwing up.
You held it together for just long enough, bro.
Literally, bro. I'm telling you, like I sat down after I got off the stage. Everybody was like, "Yo, that was so fire, man!" Like, "Oh man, I didn't even know you could DJ like that." Because like I used to put it down. I used to throw down. You know what I'm saying? I'd have like 4 tracks running at the same time, chopping in between all 4 to like take out the different parts and stuff. And so I went from that straight up to like sitting down on their cooler, like, "Hey y'all, like I appreciate the love. I'm about to go throw up again."
That's hilarious, bro. Awesome. All right, cool. And where are you still out in North Carolina? Where are you out in the world now?
I'm actually out in Tennessee. I've been out here for like 6 years now, going on 7. And I love Knoxville. It's a super nice area. That's where I met my fiance.
Nice.
And so we just kind of been doing our own thing ever since, you know?
For sure. Yeah, cool. And what got you into the renewable energy space, bro? Like what are we doing over here, you know?
This interesting person, you might know him, Scott Dozier, actually approached me. I was actually, because I'm always looking for like different ways, different like side hustles type deal, different ways that I can go and try and make a little bit of money. And so through that, I'm always like looking at different like training courses, and that's actually like as you know very well, but the viewers don't. That where I ran into you, and we vibed really super well. Like we had like a 45-minute conversation that didn't even feel like a sales conversation at all. Ended up adding each other on socials, and then like I said, I've always been kind of a hippie. I'm like a little bit like peace, love, and all that. And so whenever you approached me and you were like, "Hey, man, I'm putting together a solar company and looking for a couple of people to build out my team. Is that something you want to be a part of?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, dude, let's run it. Here we are."
Yeah,
Now,
for
did
sure.
I think at the time that was going to turn into us making a podcast, us starting this company, like all the social media and networking that we're learning and stuff like that? No, but it's
Never
been
does.
a hell of a ride and it's been a lot of fun, honestly. So,
Yeah, for sure. And this how this kind of organically popped up and happened too. Like, I know this is only our second episode that we're recording, but like I had a blast last week, bro.
yeah, for sure. It's a lot of fun just getting in here and shooting the shit.
And I've personally toyed around with starting a couple podcasts myself. I've actually recorded a few, and then we weren't able to get our. I guess actually, I think I recorded two on both of them, and we weren't able to get our third and fourth and continue on down the line. So
Mm.
if we get past this week, bro, that's a new PR for me. And
Right. See, like I toyed around with the idea of starting one. I was just always kind of nervous, just because I feel like goofiness and like the comedy. Like I'm kind of a quirky individual most of the time. You know what I'm saying? And so I feel like that would be able to fill up the time slot. I've just never had I've never been able to narrow down a topic and never had other like-minded people that would help me drive the idea. And
yeah,
so,
yeah, for
but
sure.
again, another thing that I've had the opportunity to experience and try my hand at. So
Yeah, here we are, dude. We're podcast hosts now. We're doing it.
for sure. I mean, this it's what we're going to be talking about in the podcast all the time, and just different stuff that we find interesting and different things going on in the world. But like,
Yeah, I
I've
mean, we
always
can we
been
can do things better, right? You know what I mean?
right,
How we're looking
100%.
at it. Like, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we can do things better in all ways, shapes, and forms. Like, absolutely, like the renewable energy space, but like all around. Like, let's
Right.
elevate energy. Let's elevate our energy. Let's elevate the energy of the planet. You know what I mean? And also, let's do things a little bit better around actual energy consumption and stuff.
Right. And try and help out the everyman a little bit instead of just lining the monopolies pockets type deal. But yeah, so like a holistic approach is what I was saying, like instead of just like renewable energy, which is why I really like that the solar punk idea. Like I don't know how many people out there have seen Chobani actually released an ad a few years ago that was like a solar punk ad. If you just type in solar punk Chobani ad on YouTube, you'll be able to find it. But it's super gorgeous, really well animated video that's done in like the Studio Ghibli style, which is like very, very well known anime studio. And they make gorgeous productions. But of like what the future could look like if we start embracing more like holistic or like more technology that kind of embraces the environment as opposed to using it up for its natural resources and discarding later, which is kind of like what we're on right now with everything being plastic and everything being fossil fuel derived. And I think the push for more in renewable energy and more like solar, it not only empowers people to have more independence and control over their day-to-day lives, you know what I'm saying, and less being proposed to the whims of whatever institutions are in place, and but it also is helping us take that step towards becoming more synergistic with Mother Earth, with Gaia, and being a little bit more like nature as opposed to using nature.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I saw something recently. It was from somebody that was probably in like the 70s or 80s, right?
Mm.
And he made the comment like it's time that we begin using technology to create a harmonious environment on Earth rather than using technology to manufacture weapons and garner more control over these resources, right? And which
Right.
we've obviously continued on the path of manufacturing weapons and technology for military and having more control, and not creating the peace on earth. But at the end of the day, it's we are the many and they are the few, right? And so
Right.
it's up to us to come together and to do things smarter, to do things better. And like we will continue to talk about, I think that people are waking up and they're starting to see it, the small ways in which they can take their control back, if you will.
Well, I mean, even just with like the push that you've seen, just like from society as a whole, especially here in the U.S., of getting away from like legacy media sources. You know what I'm saying? Getting away from like your MSNBC or your CSN or your NBC news channels, and kind of realizing that they all are just kind of rebranding the same, like, call it misinformation or fake news or censorship, whatever you will,
Well,
but they're
somebody's lying,
utilizing their
bro, because
power.
if you watch different TV channels, everybody's saying something different about the same thing, right? So, like, and they're all
Right.
claiming that they're speaking facts. So obviously
Right.
somebody's lying, okay?
100%.
Or
And I
or
would say
everyone is
the
lying.
people who are talking in platitudes, the people who are, this is what I look for at least. Like if somebody's just trying to silence the other side, you know what I'm saying? Or they're just taking like low blow cheap shots at the other side. Whereas when the other side is bringing facts, logic, scientific data, then it kind of starts to become clear as to who's actually speaking the truth, you know? And I think we as a whole, as a society, have kind of been noticing that a little bit more, just speaking on a, like the whole awakening process that there would be going on. And people are starting to trust more in independent journalism. That's why you're seeing social media platforms like Rumble and other ones start to gain popularity and traction, not only just from the journalists who are fleeing the censorship and shadow banning that they've been receiving on platforms like Instagram or YouTube and stuff like that, and moving and thriving on platforms like Rumble, where they don't have to self censor and only cover topics that they feel like are going to be pushed out by the agenda, you know?
Well, and it's the beauty of doing something like this too, right? Like, people are listening to podcasts more for information and
Right.
not watching the TV as much, or even something as mainstream as, Tucker Carlson, who got, did he get let
Right.
go
He
or
got kicked
fired
off
from
a,
Fox?
yeah, but he's doing freaking great on
Well,
X,
he's doing
bro.
his own thing now, right?
Yeah.
And this guy, doesn't he have his own show or something?
I'm
Right?
pretty sure,
And
like, you don't quote me on this, you know what I'm saying? But like, I'm pretty sure his first episode was the most watched non-televised event that had happened up until that point. It was like literally he was doing more, like he got more views on X and on his podcast show that he did on X than he was getting on I forget which news platform he was working for, but
Fox. Yeah, it's
Fox,
with
yeah,
Fox.
than he was getting on Fox.
Yeah.
And so that's crazy, you know what I'm saying?
That's awesome. And that speaks volumes to the fact that
People want
people
the truth.
know, yeah, they know it's bullshit. And if you're on one of these platforms, they know that, there's going to be a level of truth that you're probably not allowed to speak on. So as soon as you get off of that, especially for somebody like that who's popular enough, right? Everybody who watches Fox, probably
Right.
a lot of them were like, Tucker Carlson's my favorite because he was, you know, trying to at least get into, it seemed like,
Right,
some of
he
the
was
real
tougher on
facts.
stuff,
And
yeah, just because
yeah,
he was so big, I feel like they kinda had to give him a little bit of leeway, because like, otherwise he'd just be like, "I'll just walk," you know what I'm saying? But, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't, like, an avid watcher of his stuff, but I have seen a few, like, clips and stuff of the different things that he says, and I like that he's been going after, big business and corporate corruption and shit like that, because, like, that's what I see a lot going on in the world, and I like to see people calling that out and other people recognizing it and stuff and saying like, "Hey, this is kind of a problem." Like,
yeah, I think the thing that I immediately go to is, there is a thing called controlled opposition. And, is this controlled opposition where they say, okay, you can spew a certain amount of facts, but
right,
don't cross the line, right?
right. Just don't bring up vaccines, and you should be okay. You know. But if
That's
anybody
funny.
asks, they're super effective, bro.
There's so many things that, like, I touch on in real life, you know what I mean? That, like, I just don't even want to get into here.
Well, bro, and it's crazy. What's crazy to me is just the what you're seeing so prolifically on like what I was saying, like platforms like YouTube and platforms like Instagram or Facebook and stuff like that, where you do see all of this censorship, but it becomes like self censorship, especially in the case of YouTube. Like I can't tell you how many YouTubers I've seen complaining about the fact that like if they say anything that goes against like the narrative, if you will,
Yeah.
then it is immediately demonetized. They're kicked off of YouTube. They start getting shadow banned. Like this one guy I follow on TikTok, his name is Cancel This Clothing Company. Super awesome source of information, especially if you have any interest in the finance world. But he literally has over 1 million followers on TikTok, or at least really really close to it, right? And he went from averaging like between 4 and 7 million views on his videos to starting to talk about a certain 3-letter agency, and stopped stopped getting views, started getting like averaging like 20,000 views on certain videos, or views being completely taken down just because they're talking about said three-letter agency.
Wow.
And I think a lot of this, I'll stop with the with the technocracy talk here in just a second. But I think it's very interesting because if you pay attention to when these shadow bans and all of the videos getting taken down started happening, right? Do you remember like 6 months ago, whenever they had that hearing about where everybody was talking about how they were going to ban TikTok and shit?
Yeah.
So at the same time, the result of that hearing was they started something. They took all of the data that was going to the China company, right, and are now housing all data from TikTok for United States users in Texas. There's something that they implemented with that hearing, with the results of that hearing, called Project Texas, right, and that's them taking and housing all of the data from TikTok for U.S. users at a Oracle facility, right? And if you know what Oracle is, it's a super huge database company, been around for a very long time, and was originally started to be a database that the CIA was keeping on the US populace. And now they're the ones in control of all of the data that goes on TikTok. And all of a sudden, all anybody has on their For You page is TikTok shop and none of the news they were getting before.
Okay. Wow.
Which is pretty crazy. And in case anybody, if you couldn't already tell just by the tone of my interview versus Scott's interview, he's a little bit more on the holistic side, and I'm definitely a little bit more on the conspiracy side. But it's all good information, and it's all relevant to what's going on in the world these days.
Yeah. And quick disclaimer on that. I hate the term conspiracy theory because I feel like it's dismissive.
Well, the
I
actual
prefer
origins.
I prefer the term critical thinking, because it's basically what you're doing. You're looking at a thing and you're taking a whole bunch of other data that maybe is not considered. And what we can also talk about is that where did that term originally come into play? That term originally came into play around the JFK assassination, right?
Right. Yeah. It was literally the term conspiracy theory was coined by the CIA in order to discredit
Anything
factual,
but their
like,
narrative.
exactly.
Which okay, so check this out, and something's come out recently about this, which is maybe shed some light on it. But one of the things that I'll do is I'll kind of watch something, or I'll take in information or whatever, and I'll formulate my own sort of opinion on it. And
Right.
some of it's based on a lot of previous information that I know, because I've just taken in so much information in my life, right? So I have
Right.
a vast pool of information to sort of go off of, and I'm very skeptical as well. So I'm more on
That
that
was good.
yeah, I'm more on that questioning the narrative side than I am accepting it. So
Right.
when I watched that video, right, of JFK getting assassinated, and his wife climbs out of the car onto the trunk of a moving car, okay, my immediate thought was, why the fuck would you do that? Okay, if your husband's head explodes sitting next to you, assuming that that shot came from outside the car, you would duck and hide, unless the shot came from inside the car. And then you would panic and you would be like, how do I get out of the car? Therefore,
Right.
he's crawling on the trunk. So I always thought from watching that I was like, that shot came from inside the car, because otherwise, why would you climb on the trunk unless it came from inside the car? And everyone's like,
Right.
oh, in those kinds of situations, you panic, you don't know what to do. And I'm like,
Well, I don't
no,
know.
bro,
I don't know.
my panic would be covering my head and ducking down and screaming and freaking out. It wouldn't be
Yeah, for
climbing
sure.
onto the trunk and making myself even more available to also get shot, right? Like,
Right.
and I
A
think
hundred
something
percent.
came out recently that like showed that the driver like reached back or something and actually like
Yeah,
shot him or
apparently it was like
something. Like,
one of his bodyguards, like a member of the Secret Service. I was about to say, I'm just disclaimer, I'm not 100% sure if this fully been corroborated or not anything, but I have heard a lot about it. Is just the fact that yeah, apparently one of the Secret Service agents was the one that turned around and was trying to maybe return fire. I'm not 100% sure what his motivations were, but the second shot came from him apparently.
yeah, and what you go to with that, right, is like why would that happen? And I think it's really, really simple, because the weak that he was killed, he gave a speech.
Mhm.
He said, "There is a plot in this country to enslave every man, woman, and child. And before I leave this high and noble office, I plan to expose it."
Mhm. And then he got shut down.
The idea being that he was going to expose the fact that they're trying to voluntarily enslave us through the Federal Reserve and these other modalities, and that he was going to go against that. And anybody who's gone against the Federal Reserve and the dollar has been effectively shut down from that
Right.
day, including like Gaddafi, and like we can, go on and on. Maybe that's a
Right.
conversation.
For sure. I might have to do a little bit of digging into the Federal Reserve myself so we can have
Oh
that
man.
conversation. But
Yeah. Don't talk about the Federal Reserve, bro. They're gonna come for us next.
hey man, we're just some solar pros just having a
Hey
conversation,
man, this is all for entertainment purposes. None of this is factual whatsoever. Like we're just spitballing and having some fun over here. Okay, dude. Just
For sure.
so one of the things that we wanted to get into and talk about today, especially since the new year just happened, is
Mm,
the Gregorian calendar. And
right, that piece of work.
I know that we both have some opinions on that. Why don't you go ahead and go first?
Okay, so for those of us who don't know exactly what the Gregorian calendar is, right? The Gregorian calendar is the calendar that's used in most parts of the world. It went into effect in October of 1582, following the papal bull Intergravismus, which was a document issued by Pope Gregory the 13th, right? Basically it was a replacement of the Julian calendar, which was the predominant calendar of the time, right? The biggest change was to make it so that the average calendar year was 365.2425 days long, more closely approximating the 365.2422 day tropical or solar year that is determined by the revolution around the sun.
And the previous calendar, the Julian calendar, was what?
It was another solar calendar of 365 days in the year. Basically, so like it was about 13 days in advance. So the reason why they swapped to the Gregorian calendar as opposed to the Julian calendar is like the Julian calendar gains 3.1 days every 400 years. So whenever it was 13 days behind whenever they swapped it. And so they did that to add the divisible by 400 leap year, which gets rid of the extra days.
Okay. My knowledge of the previous calendar is basically it was 364 days with 1 day of rest. And the new year was in the spring, around like Easter or the spring equinox, which is supposed to be the real New Year, which I've been saying for years when I go out there. Spring is my favorite time of the year. Uh,
Right.
Everything is blooming, everything is new again. All the animals are giving birth, and so all the babies are running around out there and stuff like that.
Right. It
Right?
just makes sense. Like that's the time of renewal, the time of rebirth. And I'm pretty sure if you go by the actual like solar or lunar calendar, then it is 13 months. It is 364 days.
Yeah, it's 13
And
months or 28 days, and then it all goes off of
perfect.
the moon cycle, right? And so every day with every phase of the moon is always the same, and then the new moon comes and it's always the same, and we know it. And then our understanding of our connection between what's happening in the universe and ourselves. Women's cycles, it's called their moon, right? A lot of times
Right.
it goes with the moon as well. It affects the tides and all of these different things, and it's just I feel like the Gregorian calendar, as convoluted and confused a lot of things. I also saw somewhere, and I don't know how true this is, but I saw this recent. It seemed like there was more talk about the Gregorian calendar being an abomination this year more so than ever before. I don't know if my radar was more keen to it this year than it had been previously, but I'd read somewhere or seen somewhere that April Fool's Day actually stemmed from some king or
Well, yeah,
queen or
yeah, no, it
something.
because if you go, because okay, so whenever the solar calendar was still in place, right? Whenever we had the colonialization movement of us all moving around the world and taking over and shit, we were kind of forcing people to follow. At the time, it was the Julian calendar, and then it became the Gregorian calendar. But they called it April Fool's Day because it was supposed to. If you didn't celebrate New Year's on April 1st, then you were considered a fool, right? And so, but whenever we took over, we were just kind of like, no, it's actually going to be this day now, because we were just trying to control the populace. And how is it easier to control people if they're in such a state of confusion they don't even know what day it is, you know? And so,
Essentially saying anybody who follows the Gregorian calendar is a fool.
right, 100%. It makes no sense for the beginning of the year to be in January. Like, bears are
The middle of
hibernating
winter,
and they're like,
bro.
right,
Yeah, what are you
everything's
talking
dead.
about?
Like, winter's supposed to be a time for reflection, a time to
There's
like
nothing
reflect
new
on the past
happening out
year and
here.
stuff.
Everything is dead, dude. Like, what do you mean?
Right.
Yeah, there's no rebirths, bro. Like,
Right. That's like exactly. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't. There's nothing. There's nothing new happening right now. You know what I'm saying? Everything's
yeah,
kind of like
yeah,
chilling. Like, I'm gonna go eat a lot and snack up in my cave. You know, like.
yeah, for sure.
And I mean, you know, in 1849, they did try to do a 13-month calendar, right?
The positivist calendar.
Yeah, and so the
Okay.
guy was super duper religious, and like that's probably the reason why I didn't catch on, because listen to the month names, right? We've got Moses, Homer, Aristotle, Archimedes,
Oh,
Caesar, Saint Paul, Charlemagne, Dante, Gutenberg, Shakespeare, Descartes, Frederick, and Bichat. And so I think you could probably see why that one didn't really take off, right? I mean, kudos for trying. You know what I'm saying? We at
I
least
haven't
got the
heard
13
that.
months,
Yeah,
28 days, but
I haven't heard one that one's a trip. Well, and okay, so if you just look at it, right? Like, okay, September,
mm,
October, November, December. This is 7, 8, 9, and 10. Right? That's
hmm
what sept, oct, nov, dec, right? Dec, no, right? Okay, this is, but it's month 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay, so I'm good with math,
right.
and my
Well,
math ain't mathin'. Okay, that's not, that ain't right.
100%. And friggin' those names actually came from the Roman calendar, which used to have 10 months. And so December would have still been the last month. But
Everything goes back to the
I'm not
Romans,
even sure
bro.
how the number on that one worked out. You know what I'm saying? They had like 36 or 38 days or something like that. You know, it was something slightly goofy. But
Rome never fell, bro.
we're still chilling. Yeah, I
Well,
think that actually is its own like little rabbit hole to go down of the Rome never fell theory. I'm
oh,
pretty sure that is
for
a thing.
sure, for sure it is. Been
We
down
might
that
save
one.
that one for another
Been down that
episode
one,
too.
bro. Well, and the other part of it, right? Not only are the month names like that, but there's also there's 13 signs of the zodiac.
hmm
So those are correlated with just like your astronomy, right?
hmm
Okay, which yeah, so there's 13 signs of the zodiac. Women have 13 cycles every year as well. Okay, if you're in the flow. Um, and then there's some other things that match up with that 13 as well, right? But that all of that shows the interconnectedness of
Like
um
the kind of like circle of life, if you will.
yeah, our day-to-day life with the things that are going on, because if we're I think it's so funny when people try and dismiss astrology. Well, first off, we've turned what is astrology into astronomy. Okay, and it's like,
Right.
and it's this, and you oh, what's my astrology today in the newspaper, and it's kind of this woo woo whatever. Whereas
Right.
like
It's almost been turned into a cliche.
oh, for sure, bro. We will check this out. Okay, so the actual study, the true nature and study of astrology, okay,
Mhm.
is individualized to each single person. So one of the things that like human design is doing, and Richard Rudd is spreading now, which I forgot the guy's name who actually, Richard Rudd didn't start human design, right? It was somebody else wrote up this whole thing about it.
I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look it up.
So it's based on astrology. Now the study of astrology is what Nostradamus used to make all of his predictions. Okay,
hmm
now we know that not all of Nostradamus's predictions were correct, but he got an incredible number of things right. That like, how could you make that prediction? How can you know that? And it's because the astrology can be applied to the masses, but it can also be applied to you on an individual basis. So knowing your chart specifically, okay, because it's so funny that we can all agree that the moon changes the tides, right?
Right.
And the ocean is huge. There's more water on the planet than there is land, right?
Right. By a good bit too.
And we're made of water. We're more made like we're like what
70.
75% water, 70% water, just like the earth is 70, 75% water, same
Right.
thing. Okay. But no, the moon doesn't affect us. I mean,
No, not at all, right? There's no rising or lowering of any kind of tides here,
so
man.
the specific study of astrology to your individual person, when applied to you, can really, really speak volumes for you,
Right.
and explain a lot of things to you in your life. So I have this a beautiful sister friend of mine. Her name's Tegan West. And this last birthday, I did a solar return reading. I did a birth chart reading and a solar return reading also. So she gave me the breakdown of my birth chart and what it says about me based on
Mhm.
where all of the planets are aligned and where,
Yeah, that's the one where you have to like tell the location where you were born at, the time,
yep,
day, like
yeah.
everything is important.
Yeah, because where you are geographically located and where all the planets were aligned and which zodiac signs and stuff like that has a big effect on who you are. It's why we know different zodiac signs to have specific characteristics, and across the board, a lot of times they're very, very true. And you're like, oh yeah, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. I group astrology in one of those things where, like, I mean, yes, it has been kind of watered down just with modern society being like, oh my God, what's your sign? You know what I'm saying? But like, there are far too many coincidences in astrology and far too many things that ring true, you know what I'm saying, for it to be just a woo woo thing, you
Yeah,
know what I'm
for it
saying?
not to be
100%.
measurable, right? Like
Right.
it's obviously measurable at some point. Otherwise,
Right.
how would we have all of these things?
Well, and plus, like most people that discount it, I feel like they only know like your sun sign. You know what I'm saying? They just know you just know the one star sign. You know what I'm saying? They've never gotten like a full natal chart or anything like that, and don't realize that there's like 25 or 30 plus different
Oh,
like
bro, yeah,
points. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying, that they use to
yeah,
calculate like more specifically who you are. You know what I'm saying? And so
100%.
just because of that, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, I can just get my horoscope and it'll give me all the secrets to the universe. It's like, well, I mean, no, because like there's millions, if not billions, of other people who have that same star sign. You know what I'm saying? So you have to start getting below that surface level and start to uncover the iceberg that is below the water surface. You know what I'm saying? And try to see that there is much more to being a person than just that one aspect, right?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, if you just looked at your birth chart, right? Like I think cafeastrology.com, you can go get a free birth chart reading, and like just going through that, bro, is like it's so much information. And then you can
Yeah.
human design as well, and it goes even
And I
more.
just looked up who it is, and it was started by Alan Robert Krakauer in 1992.
Okay.
Developed the human design system.
So fairly right. It's a fairly new system.
Mm.
Richard Rudd has expounded upon that, and it's like, bro, the human design book is like, yeah, I'm a manifesting generator.
Heard.
So
Is that like there's different like personality types, if you will, I guess, of what they are?
yeah, there's projector, there's generator, there's manifesting generator. Um, there's a couple other ones. I think projector is maybe like the smallest percentage of people or whatever, but there's also numbers that coincide, right? So I don't know my numbers off the top of my head. It always escapes me, but I'm like a 1-8 manifesting generator or something like that, right? And it means different things. And then you can match up your chart with other people's charts, and you can
Uh,
see where there's specific connections or where there's a lack of connection. And that can explain where the potential breakdowns in communications, or where you may have some challenges in the relationship or whatever.
uh.
And it's like, bro, it's pretty on point.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out for sure.
Cool.
It sounds cool. That could be another thing that we could like put a pin into and come back for another one after I kind of like I'll go through mine and shit and we can like compare.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so back to that, there actually, if you take your specific astrological chart, like your birth chart, your solar return reading, or whatever it is, like, and you
Right.
study it to a T, you can get to a point where there's specific days where basically like you shouldn't even go out of the house. Like the likelihood that something bad is going to happen to you today is like exponentially great, as
Right.
opposed to maybe like tomorrow, right?
Right.
Literally, it literally can be like that. And that's how, stringing it back to like that Nostradamus thing, that's how Nostradamus was able to make some sort of these predictions, because as a whole, as society as a whole, it's measurable. And then on an individual basis, it can get even more detailed and measurable like that, which is, it's just a trip. And it goes back to, that traditional calendar and the 13 signs in the zodiac and the 13 months of the year with 28 days and along with the
Right.
moon cycle and how
And
this whole
maybe
thing is this big giant connection, right?
right, and I was maybe part of the reason why they have us offset from that is so that we don't tap into that information and don't be able to
100%.
sync up and
There's no
be able
maybe,
to look
bro.
out for ourselves, you know?
100%. Literally everything is designed in that way, right? Is to
Right.
confuse us from realizing and understanding like what our true power actually is.
Right. Even something that you brought to my attention recently, even the clothes that we wear is affecting the energy that we have in our bodies and the energy field that we're able to create. Because like it's this is it's this isn't even like pseudoscience, spirit science. Like we are energetic beings. You know what I'm saying? Like we are like atoms and molecules and whatnot are all 99% just empty air. You know what I'm saying? And like the only reason that we perceive things as physical is because we all agree that they are physical, essentially. And so with that being said, like our energy affects the world, right? There's been scientific studies that have literally proved that the effects of a scientific experiment can be affected just simply by having different people observing the test, right? And so different biases and different people wanting different things to
100%.
happen, like it literally will affect the data and stuff. And so that is wild. And us understanding our energy fields and being able to actively manipulate, raise, lower, whatever, what have you, you know what I'm saying? Those energy fields is one of those things that is another power that we are trying to be kept from, because now all of your clothing and stuff like that. So like we have a vibrational frequency, right? And so you told me the human body
Hertz
vibrates at
on the
like
Hertz
100.
scale. On the Hertz
Right.
scale, it's a level 100. Yep.
And then the clothing that we wear, everything also has one of these vibrational frequencies, like everything around us. And like so cotton, like organic cotton has a vibrational frequency also of 100 hertz, right? And linen has, I think it's like 1,000 or like 10,000 or something
Like
ridiculous.
5,000, bro.
Yeah. Like something super high. Just wear
Yeah.
nothing but linens
Yo,
always.
but
You'll be
there's
Jesus.
okay. So something that I learned recently about that though is that like you're not supposed to wear, I think, linen and wool together.
Okay.
And it actually like says this in the Bible. Okay. It says like, like don't wear these two things together because for whatever reason it's like it creates like a harmful resonance or something like
Yeah,
that.
they like react weirdly to each
I'm
other.
like, oh,
It's almost like if you hit like a white key and then the corresponding black key right next to it, you get that dissonance feeling.
right. And it's like,
Yeah, you're like, I
like,
don't like
yeah,
that.
yeah, that's not the one right there, bro.
For sure. That's another thing that why I feel like I was always so drawn to music. You know what I'm saying? Because like I feel like I'm like a hardcore empath. You know what I'm saying? Like I can walk into a room and immediately I know if somebody's like if somebody was just talking shit about something or something like that. Like I feel that in the air. If everybody's in a good mood and happy, you know what I'm saying? I feel that in the air too. And I absorb that shit like a sponge. If I'm around somebody who's pissed off, I'm either gonna overcome their pissed off with my positivity or I'm gonna be pissed off in about 5 minutes. And so like but the music, I feel like like so certain you've heard of like the solfeggio frequencies and
Yeah,
whatnot.
yeah.
And so like there's different frequencies that will literally elicit different feelings and emotional responses from people and stuff like that. And so I feel like that's why I listen to music so much and look to music for like, I mean, heck, I listen to sad songs when I'm feeling sad so that I can deal with that sad feeling and then go back to being happy. You know what I'm saying? And so like the music and just that vibe helps you deal with that energy and kind of like give it put it someplace, you know what I'm saying? Have a space for it. But yeah, all of this is coming back to don't wear polyester, because polyester has a vibrational frequency of 0, which is wild because over the last like 10 to 15 years,
Everything.
everything seems to be made of polyester, right? I mean, it is nice and soft, but like at the end of the day, after you dry it a few times, it gets kind of crinkly. I don't know. And like it blew my mind whenever you told me that, because I literally I was telling you this right before we got on the podcast, but I have a Under Armour hoodie that I love. It's super soft, it's super warm. I really like it. That is 100% polyester, right? And then so what I have on right now is 100% cotton. And when I tell you that I switched from the hoodie to this shirt and can literally feel, but I pay attention to stuff like this, like the way my body is feeling and stuff like that. And so, but you can literally feel a difference. It's like almost immediate, but it's just kind of like a back of the head little like, you know?
Yeah, bro. And to touch on what you're talking about music too. I'm very similar with it, where A lot of times I'll match the music to my mood, right? And that's not necessarily to, if I'm sad, it's not necessarily to put on something sad so I can wallow in it. But for me at least, I've found that it's important for me to go to the depth of the emotion so
Hmm.
that it can be fully seen and felt. It's the age old saying, it's like the way out is through, right?
Right.
I don't want to try and avoid that sadness. I want to go to the depth of it. I want to cry. I want to, if I need to, feel sorry for myself. Or whatever it is. Feel
Which
the
is
sadness, feel
good.
the grief. You know what I mean? Fully feel what is here to feel, so that it can go. Like if you like, and it's fully known now with a lot of research that's been done and stuff like that, is that suppressed emotion manifests into sicknesses.
Right.
Right. So there's a reason why many priests, a higher percentage of priests get prostate cancer, like a ridiculously high amount of priests get prostate cancer, right? And it's
Yeah.
because there's this amount of shame around, because they're not allowed to
Yeah. Suppressed sexual energy kind of deal.
suppressed energy. And so then it manifests in that place where it needs to be released, because you feel shame around these natural urges that you're having. Okay. And then it turns into prostate cancer. And similarly in all of the other parts of your body. And these are things
All
that
right.
with modern science, with quantum physics, which is the greatest discovery of
Modern science.
well, in modern science, I mean, here's the thing, is that my view of modern science has very much changed over the years, right? Because,
Yeah, especially the last like five.
well, yeah, and if we look around and see, like, I fully believe that there were technologically advanced beings on this planet 16,000 years ago, right? When all of
Oh
these
yeah, alien ant farm.
pyramids, all these pyramids went up and all of that stuff, dude. And then I don't know if you've looked into Tartaria and like the Great Mud Flood or anything like that, but the buildings and the architecture and the things that were done not that long ago. Okay,
Yeah.
there's so modern science to me
Right.
is just refinding things that I think that somebody already knows and has suppressed for whatever reason. Okay.
Right.
But quantum physics is, and you were talking about it a little bit, right? Like the observer affects what is happening. So like
Hmm.
they put a particle in a tube, right? And that particle does random things in a tube, and then there's two tubes for it, or in a vacuum, and then there's two tubes for it to go through from one side to the other. And
Right.
if no one's paying any attention to it, it acts completely differently. But if somebody is observing it, 99% of the time, the tube that particle goes through is the tube that the person thinks that it's going to go through.
Right.
Right? There's a reason why matter is a wave, and it's also a particle. It's because it's a wave until it's observed, and that's a particle. But because in our humanness, we need to be able to conceptualize it, so it needs to be something concrete almost, right? So then
Right.
comes that, because we expect it to, because it's a projection of our imagination, or
Right. Of like our subconscious kind of, but yeah.
well, like
Yeah. And so like that's kind of like there is in I'm not sure if this was quantum physics or theoretical physics, but there's like a it's called the uncertainty principle, right? Is what it is. And basically it's saying that you cannot with absolute certainty prove that anything that is not currently being observed exists. And
right.
that's kind of what you're touching on, you know what I'm saying? And so like those particles are literally
Crazy,
just
bro. What do
light
you
waves.
mean?
Right.
Yeah,
So I
what?
used to have the biggest issue with this, right? Because I was like, nah, there's got to be some way that like, because I can't see this tapestry behind me, but I still know it's there. You know what I'm saying? And so,
Hey, it's
but
there because
according to
I'm
this,
observing it behind you right now, bro.
exactly. So like that's the catch 22 to it. So it's like it's not necessarily it's not just you what you can perceive. So it's what everybody collectively can perceive or what any thing that can perceive something can perceive, you know what I'm saying? And so like that's where it gets a little fuzzy, but that's literally like what it is, because we are all just basically jittering energy right now, and for some reason whenever I look at you, you look like a Scott to me and not a jittering energy, you know.
Well, what is it like? We're 99.9% empty space, right? Because that's what atoms are, and that's what we're made up of. So there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to put my hand through my arm, except for the fact that we've tried.
You know, a wild
we
fact.
Can't do it, right?
A wild fact is there is actually a calculable percent chance that that will literally happen. Like it is physically possible, and you can Google this. So you can take this straight to Google. They know that if I go to touch something, that you will just happen to time it perfectly, and the atoms for your hand and whatever that object is will just like line up in the empty space and just phase right through each other. This is literally something that could happen. The likelihood of it is like a 0.0000. Let me keep saying zero for like 30 seconds. 1% chance of it happening, but it is possible.
So you're telling me that there's times when I was like up at bat playing baseball where I'm like, there's no way I missed that ball, right? And I completely missed it, and I could have actually not missed it, but there
is a chance
moved through one another. There's actually a chance that could have happened.
Yeah, you there's a chance that you could have had a clipping issue from a video game just phase right through that bitch.
I knew I was better than I actually was. Okay.
Like I was Babe Ruth in another reality, bro.
It's the age old, if a tree falls in the woods and there's no one there to observe it, doesn't make a sound,
right?
And quantum physics says that it doesn't, but for us to concept, I introduced that to my dad, and man, we went round and around about it at dinner one night, and we still joke about it. We have a good sense of humor about it, right? Because he's very concrete and realistic, and like what he can do with his eyes,
right?
I feel totally makes sense.
Right. I used to be very much the same way, and I still am on certain things. It depends.
For sure. Well, I mean, this is all we're talking about. This theory, this advanced theory that it's only been proven through very advanced studies in labs and stuff like that. That otherwise. The only reason why I agree that, the quantum physics says that it does not make a noise is because that's actually what the science of it says, not because I can grasp the idea of it not making a noise, because I can't, bro. Like,
right.
What do you mean?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense.
My caveat to that, and I just thought of this, but because I've never said it before, I've never like traced the same line of thought. But if the tree doesn't make a sound because there was nobody there to observe it, right? Did it fall in the first place? Can a tree fall in the woods if there's no one there to observe said tree?
Well, and here's the other part of it is, what is someone or something observing it, right? Because these trees are living things.
Right, that we've actually recently found out do communicate and shit too.
100%. I actually did this thing last year where I was living out on 400 acres on the river, and I had all these giant, redwood trees and stuff around me. And
that would be epic. I've always wanted. I've never seen a giant redwood in person.
Bro, you will. You'll come out here, bro. We'll get together this year, dude. We'll go do a podcast under the redwoods or something.
That would be fucking sick.
Bro, we'll do it. We'll do it 100%. But I began hugging trees like out when I got my property in 2016 and stuff like that. And there's actually some healing that occurs, and it's a symbiotic relationship because the tree's giving off oxygen and you're giving it CO2, right?
Right.
But you do this thing where you put your hand on your heart, and you put your hand on the tree, and you ask a question, and you see what
see what the tree says.
It's a thing, bro. I experienced.
Right. No, I would do it. I mean, I know there's people out there that probably think that sounds goofy, but 100%. Once you start,
it sounds goofy, bro. It's hella weird,
Right. Well, I mean, but once you get to where you baseline believe and understand and like really believe, you know what I'm saying? Like not just like, okay, well that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? I guess I can see that being true. Right. Once you like actually believe that it is a real thing, then you do start to notice things like that. You know what I'm saying? And like so. I mean, I don't know. Like I understand that some of it is just me like bullshitting, but like I talk for my animals a lot. Like my dog will be sitting there looking around the room, or I'll say something to her or something like that, and she'll look over at me, and I'll say whatever I think she's thinking. You know what I'm saying? She'll be like, "Man, why don't you go over here, baby? You guys are," you know what I'm saying, or like whatever it is at the moment. You know what I'm saying? And like, there's been so many times where like my fiance will be like, "I swear to God, you're saying literally exactly what she's thinking," and shit. And so
Bro,
like, I don't know. There's weird stuff like that. You know, like
I've 100% communicated with my animals previously, and I actually, there's a woman who, because there's mediums, right? Okay, so this
right.
woman is like an animal psychic or an animal medium, and so my best friend was very very skeptical of this. They have dogs. I had previously had like 4 cats at one point. Um,
Right.
and she'd speak to all the cats and talk to us, and we'd have a whole thing. We're crying and it's like beautiful. And there were some really cool things that happened. I was just like, what? And then
Yeah.
Bobby had the same thing. She came up and talked to him as far as with his dogs, and he was very skeptical. So he wasn't alluding to too many details or anything like that.
Right. Try not to give anything away that she could analyze.
Yeah, at first he kind of thought that it was bullshit, and then over time he was just like, bro, literally everything that she said ended up being on point,
Right.
so and she teaches people how to do this, and so the way that you do it is you connect through their eyes, right? And there's a saying that's something like the eyes are the seat of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
So and this is the way that I would do it, and I've done it. And you communicate in pictures with animals because they don't understand words, right? They don't speak your language. So
Right.
you look into your animal's eyes, or when your animal's not there, if you can picture their eyes, right, and bring that into you, and then project the picture of what you want them to do or what they want them to see or whatever. This is the way in which you can communicate with animals. And very similarly, this is the telepathy that humans can experience. There are people on the planet who I think that there's like the most extreme example of this is that there's like brothers, or there may be twins or something, and one is
Right.
sitting in one room watching a TV and the other is sitting in another room. And the guy just in the other empty room is telling you verbatim exactly what this person is watching on the TV screen. Okay, so
That's fucking cool.
And
yeah, I think I've heard of some experiments like that and stuff,
yeah,
but
and
never
there's
to that
multiple
degree.
examples of this, and they say that like the dolphins are telepathic and they have like
Mm-hmm.
20% of their DNA is activated, right?
Right.
We only have like 10% of our DNA activated. This is why dolphins can use sonar and also supposedly telepathy and stuff. Fun fact on dolphins: did you know that it's illegal to communicate with dolphins?
Illegal to communicate with dolphins? No, that's
Look it up.
sketchy.
Everybody,
What do you mean communicate by dolphin? What do you mean with communicate? I'm doing it right now.
So Joe Rogan does like a funny stand-up where he's talking about dolphins, right? And I don't remember if he was sober, if he was high, or he was on mushrooms or something, but he's talking about dolphins and how like dolphins, like what if dolphins were like humans, but like humans of the water? And like he's got this really funny stand-up thing about it. But like
it is illegal to interact with wild dolphins. You're not allowed to swim with, pet, touch, or attempt to elicit a reaction from them.
why?
Right. Because you might become friends.
We do it with everything else. See, we can do it with everything. It's why?
Yeah, that's
Tell me
insane,
why.
dude. I have no idea, but it's they say it's for like your health or for your like your health, your protection.
Of course, yeah, they say all kinds of things, dude. They've also said that. Well, never mind.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy, especially because they are the only other like front runner for ability to utilize larger portions of their brains than we are. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And having more cognitive ability than us, and that's what we don't want to communicate with.
And but back in the day, and here's what's cool is that like we're getting back to some of these things, right? Like back in the day, women used to go into the water, and the dolphins would assist them in giving childbirth. And those children are more intelligent. They're more prone to higher levels of intelligence or intuition. That's also a real thing that you can look up. I watched a show, I think it was on Netflix, and it's like Netflix is pretty like convoluted and watered down, right? But there is some levels of truth in there. And
For sure, yeah, 100%.
there was a thing on dolphins there, and it was people were studying dolphins, and they went and they observed dolphins, and they were all like standing up. They were in the water, obviously, but they were all
Right.
upright, and they were like in a circle, like they were having a meeting. Okay. And as soon as the dolphins realized that they were being observed by humans, they vanished, bro.
Yeah, they scattered, bro. But what if dolphins are like some super elite like society and shit like that, where we're because you know how people talk about like the lost city of Atlantis and whatnot, and so like there's a big school of thought that all thinks that there's something underwater, some type of civilization underwater. I've even heard theories of people saying that some of the UFOs they think actually came from underwater because like the Tic Tacs and stuff like that, whenever they were popping up and stuff, would shoot under the water. You know what I'm saying? They would disappear underwater. And so there's a lot of people who think the reason we don't know more about our oceans is kind of intentional ignorance. And so what if it's fucking dolphins, bro?
we're exploring space supposedly, and we've hardly explored any of our ocean. You know what I mean? Like, why is that, dude? But,
right.
So
yeah, we won't even get into the whole firmament discussion and shit today.
I think that's maybe for another time,
bro. And that one's almost a little that one's even a little bit far out on my standards. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm willing to believe a lot of shit, but the fact that we live under a giant dome. But the biggest thing that I can't argue with on that, and I would have to do some more research in order to not have an ignorant of an opinion, but is the only thing that makes me doubt the standard description of how space and Earth works and the interaction is the fact that what is it? A pressurized system cannot coexist next to a vacuum. Like it's physically impossible unless there is some sort of buffer layer, right? Which some people say is the atmosphere, but how is air dense enough to do that? You know what I'm saying? And so like there's some questions there that I would have to do some research in order to answer for myself, and therefore don't feel comfortable commenting on it either way.
I got a bunch to say about it, but this rabbit hole is way too long for this episode. I think that we're about at the end of the rope here anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I think we are as well. Yeah. And so do you want to go ahead and wrap up this week's episode on there?
We'll wrap it up for sure.
Well, we really appreciate you guys joining us. We hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned a thing or two. Definitely Google the dolphin thing. That's pretty fucking wild.
Yo, for real. Hey, and quantum physics too. If you haven't, you know what I mean?
For sure.
Just at least on a theoretical basis, just have an idea of, you know, some of the really cool new things that we're discovering about our reality.
For sure. And don't worry, if you miss a couple of them, we'll be right here to guide you along the way.
Best believe.
Thanks, everybody. Keep that energy elevated and hope you have a good time. See you next week.
uh, uh,